All right, we got some time here while I'm waiting for a fence post to get welded, so I figured I'd do a quick video. I was in a Twitter conversation about 2 days ago, by the time you guys see this video, where it got brought up like it regularly does whenever people are talking about kind of ethics in technology or Christianity in technology, like how we view technology. Is it good? Is it evil? Is it neutral? Is it none of those? You know, that kind of stuff. And I got thinking about it, and I really wanted to take some time and figure out what my view of it is, because it's becoming kitsch right now, like just really kind of overdone and not well thought out or kind of explained, to say that kind of phrase, that technology is neither good nor evil nor neutral, and then just to leave it at that, and to like not explain what the position is and what the view of technology is, or like how should we interact with technology. It's supposed to sound sophisticated when you say that, but it isn't. It leaves you with this kind of like wanting of like, well, how am I supposed to interact with something like this, like a broad sweeping concept that really is getting more and more purchased into our lives on a daily basis. So how should a Christian view technology? Well, we can't view it as just good, because there are things that with almost any technology that you can find evil uses for. Like take a steak knife. A steak knife is a great way to get steak into your body. It's an extension of yourself, because like you could just gnaw on the steak, you try and like pull it apart with your hands, but the steak knife cuts it up into bite-sized pieces, like you would with your nails or your teeth, but it's just that extension of you. And it acts in the way it's supposed to, and it helps with your nourishment, and you could totally see it as good. But the fact that it cuts meat makes it into the evil that you could use it for as well. It doesn't take a huge leap of understanding to understand that knives can also be used to cut humans, which are made of meat, that kind of stuff. So that kind of duality of what they're for messes with people when they think about, like, is tech just good? Well, it's not just good, and it's also not just evil. Like, yes, the knife stabs people, but it also feeds people. So we can't count it as both. And then, you get people, it's like, well, then it's neutral, because that just makes it easy. If it's neutral, then we don't have to think about it. We just have to, like, react to it as people use it in good or evil ways. And it's clearly not neutral. The way I come to terms with the fact that it's not neutral is that if you have something that is moving in both directions, is moving in a good direction and an evil direction, it's not neutral. Neutral is the center that does not move. It's the thing that kind of balances all those kind of things. Balance is neutral, and an object that moves in both directions is not neutral. It's actually something different that is bigger than both those directions and bigger than simply the balance in the center. So if it's not good and it's not evil and it's not neutral, and we're just going to leave it at that, it's like, well, then it has to be something, and that kind of leaves us wanting. And I think this boils down in a real specific way to how Marshall McLuhan talks about technology and media. He talks about it in a way of understanding it is if you have conceptions or preceptions, and that he talks and teaches about perceptions, not concepts. And we have good concepts for technology. We can conceive of what a knife can do, and that's why we can both feed people with it by cutting up the steak and stab people with it by using it as the pointy end, that kind of thing, because we can understand what the concept of a knife is. But when we perceive what a knife is, when we perceive it as the extension of ourselves, well, then we have a different kind of relationship with the knife. We can perceive that, oh, this just allows me to do what I could do more efficiently. How a Christian needs to understand that level of perception is that we have to kind of reconcile what human beings intrinsically are with the extensions that they have through technology. This is not the same as the object by itself. You've probably heard it 100 times that guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, no, people with guns shoot people and then they die. That's how the equation actually works. It's not that guns don't kill people. Like, yeah, a gun sitting by itself doesn't kill people, but it also doesn't perform the functions of a gun, because the functions of a gun, um, those are intrinsically tied to the people who use the guns. And you can see that, like, that's not an evil thing either, just outright. In westerns, you had good guys with white hats and bad guys with black hats, and they were both using guns shooting at each other. So who was winning? Where was good? Where was evil? It doesn't work that way. But when you perceive it as an extension of human, like the human being, like who we are intrinsically, well, then you have to treat technology differently, because human beings are not good or evil or neutral. Human beings at their core, from their beginnings, from their inception in the womb, according to scriptures, are sinful. What if we're supposed to look at technology as if it's sinful because it's the extension of what we are as humans? What if that's the reality that we actually exist in? That technology is intrinsically sinful the way humans are intrinsically sinful and in need of redemption? I think one of the best ways to see this is, the current debate and kind of debacle about like electric vehicles. Yeah, they're supposed to be saving the environment, and they're supposed to be better, on all these different levels, and they're sleeker and they're new and they can drive you and they can tell when someone's in front of the car, so they stop, all that kind of stuff. There's all these good things about this technology, but there's all these bad things that we really don't want to reconcile as well. These bad things involve like the child slave labor that's used to mine cobalt for their batteries, that almost all these EVs use, that a lot of electronics, including the one I'm recording on, probably use. Those two things can't be reconciled. Let's say they do save the environment and do give us who can purchase them this kind of utopic new world. It's on the back of slavery. How is this good thing a good thing anymore? And how is this bad thing made good by the good thing? Well, what if it's not about that balance? What if that neutrality doesn't exist in the middle, and the way that it's moving on either plane towards good and evil doesn't matter either, because that's not what the actual reality of the situation is? What if the batteries, the electric vehicle, anything, the hammer, the steak knife, all that kind of stuff, what if it starts off sinful like a human being does, because it's only ever an extension of a human being, and it needs to be redeemed the same way that a human being is redeemed, by knowing who Christ was, by knowing what his work on the cross did for us, by accepting his lordship in our lives, and by devoting our lives as disciples and followers to him. Now, that doesn't mean doing Christian things with tech, but what that does mean is understanding what tech's purpose is for, that we're supposed to worship Christ as human beings, and technology as an extension of ourselves has to be a part of that worship, or it will trend towards evil. It will trend towards sinfulness and idolatry. A great way to kind of see this is, again, through those electric vehicles, is that you then have this situation where, I have an electric vehicle which has good and evil in it, but what I'm going to do with it is make sure that, my life reflects Christ, that I'm taking myself to church, that I'm taking myself to other people who need it, that kind of stuff. The steak knife's another great example. Like, I can stab someone with the steak knife and do evil, and I can feed myself with the steak knife and do good. But what I can do with the steak knife, now that I know that Christ redeems it, is make sure that people who cannot feed themselves are fed, that I can feed people with the use of my technology to feed the least of these, my brothers, like Christ calls us to. When you boil technology down to that, when you boil technology down to whether or not you have conceptualized it as sinful from the outset, and being able to use it either in a righteous way, in a way that like points towards the gospel or not, that lets you kind of sort out your priorities, and now you no longer have to deal with the guilt of the evil that can happen or that is happening with those technologies, because you're pointing it to Christ, where all things will be made new. I think this is where Gutenberg got his kind of start, and we've actually seen the reverse of this, where it's been perverted outside of this. Gutenberg's first thing with his print technology that he did was to like propagate the gospel. He made Bibles. And since then, we've seen the opposite. We've seen, publication of just like horrible things. And that's because he started off with the propagation of the gospel, and it did the reverse. It got perverted. And what we need to do is take all of our technologies, every little bit, and ask ourselves, is like that, this is sinful, how do we make it not sinful?